Welcome back to B&B Movie Reviews. The movie has been out for a few weeks now, but we can't stop talking about it. You've probably read and watched all the theories and breakdowns. Well, get ready for one more. Our spoiler review for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is coming up, so stay right there. Gwen Stacy teams up with Miguel O'Hara and Jessica Drew to send Vulture back to his universe in the visually compelling and thrilling opening to Across the Spider-Verse. So, Brad, like I said, this is a full spoiler review.
Full spoilers.
Yeah, so this sequence takes place in the first part of the film. I mean, we get to see all the visual aesthetics of the animation.
What a surprise to start with Gwen Stacy's world.
Yeah.
We're coming into Across the Spider-Verse, huge, massive fans of all the characters from Into the Spider-Verse, but specifically Miles Morales. So when this movie started off in Gwen's world and then travels through Gwen's world for a long time, I was a little taken aback, but not for long because the sequence is so darn good.
It's really good. And I guess we could start a little bit back as far as like our anticipation for this movie coming out of Into the Spider-Verse from 5 years ago. And I think that plays into this opening sequence where, you know, we're ready, we're jazzed up, we're ready to get back into this universe. And then we literally start off with Gwen. But
it's like a little subversion there. But like anticipation-wise, we talked about this last week when we were discussing The Flash. It can be the enemy of a good time,
yes,
right?
It can be.
You know, everyone's saying, like, The Flash is the greatest comic book movie of all time. You go and you watch it, you're like, oh, it's okay. Here, we both already agreed that Into the Spider-Verse is one of the best comic book movies of all time.
Easily.
So how can a sequel possibly top that?
Yeah.
And you walk into Across the Spider-Verse a little, you know, arms crossed. You know,
a
like,
little bit.
Prove it to me, Across the Spider-Verse.
Can you do it again?
It does.
Yes, it does. And then let's get into the beginning of the movie with Gwen Stacy, because the one thing that I loved about her world, her universe, and the relationship with her father, played by Shea Wiggum, is how expressionistic it is in the way that it uses mood to change the colors.
Done in the style of the original Spider-Gwen comic book covers.
Okay.
Like that kind of drippy, pinky, dreamy landscape. And, you know, the colors shift depending on the mood of the scene. And, you know, that right there is enough evidence that more movies need to be animated, because animated movies can tell story and communicate emotion in ways that live action simply cannot, or often chooses not to.
They choose not to. And that relationship between her and her father, that those first few scenes, and then even when we get to after this sequence when they finally capture Vulture, and Captain Stacy comes and she's trying to get away, and she basically has to reveal herself to her father. And that scene, again, going back to the visual style of it, and almost how heartbreaking that is when he basically pulls his gun and is about to arrest his own daughter because he's also hurt as far as like her lying to him.
And the brilliance of that scene is how it sets up how Gwen will react and encourage Miles to behave with his folks,
with his
right?
parents.
So Captain Stacy learns that my daughter is Spider-Woman. That's horrible. She needs to go to jail.
Yeah.
It propels Gwen to join up with Miguel O'Hara and Jessica Drew and, help protect the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
And she abandons her world and her family. And she doesn't think it's possible for Miles to reveal his identity and what he's up to his parents based on how Captain Stacy reacted to her revelation.
Yeah, and then as we're and then I love that opening because then we get the title sequence, which is basically 20 minutes into the movie. We get basically this short film.
And Daniel Pemberton's score that entire time, picking up the drums.
Yeah.
And just layering how, just telling us where we should be emotionally. And then switching it up.
Yeah.
And then throughout the whole film, Pemberton's score is just this wild, chaotic beast of a score.
Yeah, Daniel Pemberton, one of my favorite composers working right now, and I know you did an interview with him, which I listened to, which was awesome.
Thank you.
It was
Comic Book Couples Counseling.
It was so good. So yeah, and I want to talk more about Daniel Pemberton as we get to the climax and how that circles back to the opening.
Because his score does what Miles' story with his parents and Gwen's story with her parent, they rhyme, right? So the score is rhyming constantly too.
It's so good. But then we get to 1610 after that title sequence, and we could talk a little bit about the spot. We come back to Brooklyn. Miles. It's almost like the classic Spider-Man story, trying to juggle your school life and your personal life with being a superhero, and we kind of see that in this world where we get introduced to the spot.
And he's so confident. Miles is so confident. He is Spider-Man. He is the Brooklyn Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Everything's working out for him. He knows how to operate as a superhero within this community.
Yeah.
And when he encounters a cosmically strange being like the Spot, which is a classically goofy character from the comics. No respect to the Spot from the comics, but if you think about his power set, it's demented. And the movie knows it's demented, and so it takes him from being a villain of the week to being an arch nemesis of Miles.
And it's so interesting too, because I almost like how Miles' story and the Spot story parallel, and you also see the path of each one where Miles gets bit by this spider, and he goes down this path to become the hero of Brooklyn. But then you see the Spot and how he becomes the Spot with the collider from the first movie.
Yeah, linking it directly into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, linking it back to Into the Spider-Verse. But how they're basically, he's saying I'm your nemesis, and how the origin of the Spot is almost paralleling with the origin of Miles as well.
Miles should respect the Spot's pain, but Miles's flaw at the opening of this movie is that he dismisses this guy as a joke because he looks like a Dalmatian, right? And he's not worthy of battling Spider-Man. He's just another dope that I can kick around.
Yeah.
And part of this story is about Miles realizing maybe you should also be paying attention to what the people around you are going through. And when someone comes to you as angry as the Spot is, you should listen.
Yeah. The opening of this movie, the first act, I want to get more into the parents and the relationship between that, and also a lot of the meta commentary. But we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to continue our discussion, spoiler discussion on Across the Spider-Verse. So stay right there.
Every 2 minutes, a woman in the U.S. is diagnosed with breast cancer. And that's why when others look away, we lean in. We're fighting alongside patients because we know one moment can change everything. With your help, more moments of hope are possible. Join our fight. Save lives.
Miles, there's chapters that are a part of every spider story every time.
No!
You have a choice between saving one person and saving an entire world, every world.
Stop him! Now!
Miles, no!
You can't run forever, kid!
I'm just as much a Spider-Man as any of you.
Miguel O'Hara has tasked himself to protect the canon of Spider-Man at all costs, even if it means the sacrifice of Miles' father with one of the many meta-commentaries that is happening in Across the Spider-Verse. There's a lot going on in Across the Spider-Verse.
There is.
And the thing that I respond to the most is this notion of protecting the canon.
Yeah.
This is what Spider-Man is. This is what Spider-Man is not. Uncle Ben has to die. Stacy has to die.
Yeah.
And Miles is like, no.
This is not how. No, I can do both. And
Yeah.
I love Miles's place in the canon of that. It's very interesting to see a lot of that. It's funny too because there was an interview that with the directors in the junket, and they were talking about like some of the themes that they were going for with that, and they said the interviewee asked them, are you speaking to the fan base that has rejected Miles, since the incarnation of this character? And before he could even finish asking that questions, the directors were like, yes.
Yeah.
Like this is a commentary on another meta commentary on how the fans have reacted and responded in accepting Miles as a Spider-Man.
This is a conversation that fans, that the people watching this movie need to listen to.
Yeah.
Nerds like us, we need to pay attention because I've been there. I remember when Ultimate Spider-Man first happened, when Bryan Michael Bendis and Mark Bagley redid Spider-Man for the modern age of the year 2000, I think, 2001 maybe. And I was like, what is this? This isn't Steve Ditko and Stan Lee. This is not my Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And we become so precious about these characters that we supposedly love.
Yeah.
And we become restrictive with that preciousness. And it's important to really break up what you think a Spider-Man story, what a superhero story should be, what is actually the core value at the core of a Spider-Man story. And it's not, Miles needs his Uncle Ben moment, he needs his Captain Stacy moment. That's not what Spider-Man is. With great power, there must also come great responsibility.
That's the core.
And however you explore that, you're exploring it, that means it's a Spider-Man story.
Exactly. And then going to the movie with the character of Miguel O'Hara speaking to the meta commentary that is happening within the fan base about it's this idea that they have within the context of the story called a canon event. And they have to protect these canon events so that certain things may happen in order for the canon to not explode or to collapse.
I remember watching the trailers for Across the Spider-Verse, and it started to really look like Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, was being positioned as the villain of this story. And he kind of is, but like any villain, he has reasonings.
It feels like more of a maybe an antagonist.
Yeah. But I think, the person who loved Spider-Man 2099, another comic that I really enjoyed back in the 90s, I was a little like, I don't know if I like this version of Miguel O'Hara. But what's important, again, is that all the Spider-Men, Peter Parkers, they are flawed characters. And the most compelling elements of any Marvel comic book ever, really, is how they struggle, their heroes struggle with the very mundane, very human problems. It's not about stopping the Green Goblin or stopping the Spot or stopping Vulture. It's about dealing with your own selfishness.
No, I like that. I like that aspect of Spider-Man, especially with that character, dealing with the mundane, being the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
And you see that with Miles in this movie, as we were talking about before. Miles was feeling pretty good, feeling pretty confident. And whenever Spider-Man is feeling pretty good, feeling pretty confident, that's when the Parker luck comes around and knocks you on your butt.
So then Miguel talks about the canon event because when they go to Mumbattan and the Spider-Man India, his Inspector Singh, was supposed to die as part of the canon event, and Miles ends up saving Inspector Singh, so that causes the canon event to kind of like get disrupted. So when they go back to Spider Society, Miguel is explaining all of this, and then we start to learn about Miles's place and what his canon event is when it's going to be the death of his father by the Spot that's going to be happening in 2 days. And Miles bucks up against that. He's like, no. He's like, He's like, if you knew that, he's asking Peter B. Parker, he's asking all these other Spider-Men, it's like, if you knew Uncle Ben was going to die, would you just let him die?
Yeah, I mean, the Spider Society has lost its way.
They have.
You know, they're stepping aside to let people die, get in harm's way, and that's not what Spider-Man do. You know, that's not what they should be doing. And if they have the knowledge and the ability to protect somebody, they need to reach out. And they do establish in this film, by reaching out, they are threatening the space-time continuum, and you see Mumbattan crumbling in on itself, and the spider people have to come in and like fix things. But they are fixing things.
They are.
Right?
Yeah.
And also, based on where this story goes, ultimately what we learn about Miles Morales, clearly the canon event rules don't actually apply to everything, because our Miles Morales is an anomaly within the Spider Society. You know, his spider has come from another universe and bitten him and removed the Spider-Man from that Spider's universe and placed an extra Spider-Man in Miles's universe, which effectively killed his Peter Parker. So why didn't Miles's original, or that Spider's original universe, crumble as well when those canon events didn't happen? So there's something that's being explored and being hidden from us that I think we'll learn a little bit more about in Beyond the Spider-Verse.
That's interesting, because on first sight, that can actually look like a plot hole, but
or is it actually what this movie is all about?
Is all about showing that, you know,
they have to find solutions.
Exactly.
Miguel O'Hara has already found solutions on what to happen when a canon event starts to, when a canon event's removed. So, you know, they need to get together and work out what's really important to them, and not do this Band-Aid thing and not put this stranglehold on what they believe a Spider-Man history should be.
So going to this whole idea of the fact that now Miles's father has to die, and basically in order for him to be Spider-Man, which we don't really believe that.
Miles rejects.
Let's go to that dynamic between him and his parents, even before he even leaves his universe to go with Gwen to the to Mumbattan. Beautiful stuff that we see here. It's like, for me, this movie really sings in the quiet moments, the moments that he has with the scene that he has with his father after, you know, the struggle with the spot.
There are so many quiet moments.
Yeah, the scene with his mother, the scene with Gwen on top of the building. All of those things are things that really make this movie sing to me.
And they shoot it the way that they would shoot a live action sequence like that. You know, when you're having this conversation between Miles in costume as Spider-Man, his dad, Jeff, not aware that Spider-Man is his son, although is he aware? And you have these shots where the camera is pulled back and we watch that scene in silence from a long distance. And you just don't see that in modern Western animated movies.
You don't. Just in Western movies in general, I mean, you don't see a lot of movies take time to breathe and to really build character and build relatiaships
this
that
is
are actually
drama as much as it is the greatest action movie of the year. Sorry, John Wick Chapter 4.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And even that scene with Gwen on the top of the building, like just the aesthetic and the camera movements, the way the camera moves and you see them upside. That rotation when she walks under the building and sit underneath the under the building there. All of that stuff is just beautiful. And then there's just the conversations that they're having, like with her reminiscing about, you know, her relationship with Peter Parker, and that, you know, every time in every universe, you know, her relationship with Spider-Man ends in tragedy. And, you know, Miles telling her, well, you know, it could be different
There's always a first, right? And he is the anomaly. So in his case, he's the first, right?
The first,
I think the movie does such a good job of telling different types of stories, handling different types of tones, juggling that just in the way that it juggles animation styles. And as Miles is entering all these different universes, we're seeing these different aesthetics. And what separates this film from Into the Spider-Verse is it's not about those aesthetics coming to Miles's world, it's Miles going into those different worlds. And the playfulness of the animation throughout the runtime, I've never experienced anything like it. The only thing close is Into the Spider-Verse, and what Across the Spider-Verse does is it takes that and extends it to its logical conclusion.
I love it. I love it. And I mean, I know we don't have much time in this segment, but got to give a shout out to Spider-Punk, and we'll talk about him coming up. But yeah, I mean, Daniel Kaluuya is just amazing. So
the voice work in general,
all the voice work, but we'll definitely get into that. So stay right there. We will be back with more discussion on our spoiler review of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Stay right there.
And someone says, you need a bone marrow transplant, those are just not words you want to hear.
I got a call that it was the best match. It was one of the best days of my life. I'm so happy that you're okay.
I just want to say thank you for the second chance at life. Thousands of patients need a donor like you. Learn how you can help at bethematch.org.
Oh, yeah? Let's see that. Let's go. Thread the needle.
Over my heels, falling on my head, but all of my fears were already dead. And if I could rewind it for you, if you could remind me of what I felt before.
And Miguel. The whole thing was his idea.
And who's Miguel?
Oh, he's like a ninja vampire Spider-Man, but a good guy.
A vampire good guy. I'd pay good money to see that. So how long ago did they invite you?
It's only like a few months ago.
Months is kind of a long time, isn't it?
Okay, this one counts for 2.
All of my fears were already dead. And if I could rewind it for, if you could remind me of what I felt before I felt.
Look at you.
Look at me.
Miles and Gwen reunite in Universe 1610's Brooklyn as they swing through the city, catching up on missed time together. So, Brad, I love that sequence. It's just
gorgeous.
It's gorgeous to watch. It's like, just seeing how they do a lot of the swinging through the city.
The speeds, the cuts, the long takes.
Yeah.
I mean, why I say that this is the best action movie of all time? Well, all time. Am I saying that? Maybe I am. I'm gonna go with it today anyway.
Go with the hyperbole.
You look at that sequence, and if a live-action superhero movie attempted to pull off the shots that you got in that last little clip, it would read so phony, right? They can't do the believability of what Across the Spider-Verse pulls off.
And it takes you out of that moment. Like I said, with live action, it's like you can kind of see the seams. With animation, it just makes everything look fluid, where you're brought into that world.
Yeah, there's no uncanniness.
There's no uncanny valley, but you have that with live action, and then you start to see that, and then it could kind of break and take you out of the movie. So I love seeing that. And even with somebody like we just mentioned before, with Spider-Punk, seeing how they animate the different spider people, and bringing and being able to kind of collage, pun intended, collage all that together and make it feel like something new and different.
If you're ever pulled out of Spider-Verse, it's when they introduce a new aesthetic. So like when Spider-Punk shows up and it's done in that Sex Pistols font, you go, oh, this is odd, this is strange, and your mind adjusts, but your mind adjusts pretty darn quickly.
Absolutely.
And because it's so inventive and it's showing you things you've never seen before, you're invested, you're in.
You're all in. Let's transition to the end of the movie, because like I said, this is a spoiler review. So he's at the Spider Society. There's a machine that's built that could send the Spider people back to their universe.
The go-home machine.
The go-home machine. So because he was bit by a spider that was not from his universe, it's reading the DNA from Universe 42.
The spider's DNA.
The spider's DNA. So when he goes back home, he thinks he's going back to 1610, but he's actually back in the universe where there is no Spider-Man.
Yeah. And the slow reveal for the audience, when you rewatch it, I mean, it's so confident, right?
And the way it cuts between Gwen, Miguel, Jessica being in his universe and Miles being in the other universe.
Yeah.
When you get to outside of his room,
you think they're all converging. You think it's like Magnolia.
Yes,
no.
You think it's all converging, and then the moment he realizes, because he starts to glitch, but then he realizes like, wait, I'm not in the same universe.
That Daniel Pemberton anomaly score, that hum, that thrum, like. Oh, it's really unnerving. It's suddenly you're like in a David Lynch movie.
Dude, and then when he sees Uncle Aaron come through the door, and then it's like and we as an audience know that, okay, this isn't good.
Yeah.
But because he lost his uncle and how much love and affection he has for his uncle, he embraces him. And well, of course, Uncle Aaron knows that that's not, something's off. And everything that we get with the reveal of who the Prowler is, which the Prowler, I guess we'll say it.
Say it.
It's Miles Morales.
Right. So we get, double mint Morales here.
Yeah.
And then you start really paying attention to the background of these frames, right? And it's suddenly like, well, there's a lot of fires in this New York City. This New York City's not doing too well. This is Biff's Back to the Future Part 2, Hill Valley.
Yes.
And it's such a great cliffhanger.
It is a great cliffhanger. And I know a lot of people have kind of argued or complained or have some issues with that because it feels like a cliffhanger.
Empire Strikes Back. Like Empire Strikes Back, it leaves you on a cliff, but it also kind of like tidies it up. It has an ending. This ends with to be continued. Across the Spider-Verse is not necessarily a complete narrative.
Well, it's not a complete narrative, but I would argue that it does feel like it does have a complete character arc for both Gwen and for Miles in the story as well.
There's a beginning, a middle, and an end for them. Yeah.
For both characters. And I gotta go back to Daniel Pemberton, because this was a moment that it was an aha moment for me, where you get that score and how it compares with the opening of the movie, where when you see the opening of the movie and you get the title sequence, it also has that same part when Miles G. Morales as Prowler is being revealed. So it's almost like the beginning of the movie is almost kind of hinting at what the ending is, but then also we get that conclusion with the drum beat with Gwen Stacy, when at the beginning, like, she starts to play her drum solo and it falls apart.
Yeah, a scene where in the beginning she is falling out of her band. Like she's being rejected by her band. And now at the end of this movie, she's collecting a new band.
She's collecting a new band, and that solo, like it crescendos, and the way that it crescendos and it goes into that to be continued.
Yeah.
That
Pemberton
musical
completes the beat of the first track.
It's like he's telling a story thematically and sonically through the music, and from the beginning and the end. And I thought, like, just to be able to bookend that was astonishing.
Yeah, like the experience is so thrilling all the way through that, yes, I was surprised that we hit it to be continued and we were not going to see the conclusion of this story. Mm-hmm. At the same time, everything that we got in the contents of this singular runtime is so good that I'm just excited for Beyond the Spider-Verse, which is what it was like when you watched Back to the Future Part 2, and during the credits of that movie, you got the trailer for Back to the Future Part 3.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I have a problem with Across the Spider-Verse is I would have liked a trailer for Beyond the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, but this being animated, I kind of was like, they probably don't have everything finished, but I am so chomping at the bit to find out where we pick up, how this story is going to conclude. I love that it feels like we're telling a contained story about Miles Morales and this Spider-Man.
Which is incredible because there's 200 characters in this movie?
I know. And it's so crazy, especially in the time that we live in with superhero movies where it's just like, oh yeah, let's just continue the story. But because of how these movies are made and the love and the care and the detail that's put into these films, I like that they are just focused on making a singular trilogy and focusing on that.
And you can get lost in the Easter eggs, right? You could spend the whole movie hitting pause and taking notes. Those are probably the people who are really cautious and protective of the canon. And I would just encourage you to let the pause go.
Let it go.
Let it go. Just experience what this story is trying to tell you.
Yeah. And I mean, it has all those nostalgic beats to it, but it does a great job of being able to be its own thing and tell its own story. And it just even before we get out of here, is just going to the different universes. We go to the Venom universe. We go to a Lego universe. You get to see all these different universes. We get when he goes through the canon event, we get to see Peter Parker. We get to see Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker.
Yeah, some live action. Donald Glover shows up as a version of the Prowler. What's your favorite Spider-Man besides Miles Morales? If you had to pick a favorite Spider-Man.
Oh, I like Web Slinger.
Okay, Web Slinger's not bad. I like Peter Parked Car.
Oh, nice. So that's our spoiler review as B+.
Oh,
I know we said it before.
B+. My favorite movie of the year, without a doubt. Probably my favorite movie of the decade. Maybe my favorite movie ever.
Same.
How's that for hyperbole? Take that, Flash.
There you go. So you've heard it right here. B+ for both of us, one of the best films of the year. So thank you for joining us on this latest episode of B&B Movie Reviews. Come be a part of the conversation. If you have questions, suggestions, feel free to email us at bnbmoviereviews@gmail.com. And with that, we'll see you at the movies.